Greetings. This is John Savers on World War II. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today will be our third episode in our look at World War II. As with the previous two episodes, we are going to have a guest, a learned individual, a man of great stature, a man who actually spoke to Adolf Hitler and who had an understanding of the man on a personal level and who understood the regime guide us in a look at a certain style of fighting which was employed early in the German campaign. Now, as I have mentioned in the past, there is an attempt to demonize Hitler and his regime, and anyone who spoke to Hitler or was part of it, almost by necessity, must be a demon also. And this is the sort of a false intellectuality which we deal with here. We have few people who seek to have an honest presentation of events in history. We are, of course, a minority, and I think it's entirely possible that the hostility to truth in this particular area is such that it could mean the death of public access TV as the establishment proclaims irresponsible voices and so forth, out of control, and all that verbiage that they use to try to beat down truth. So we do say bear watch, and you will understand events. We are going to go ahead now and present this particular information, and we will, throughout this particular war story, talk about the German people as I think they were, and this fight as we think it was, and the forces we think are there. That
when on September 1st, 1939, war erupts on the Polish frontier. An earth-shaking revelation will astonish the world public. And what is it? It is the revelation of a form of military genius that completely transforms the strategy and tactics of the past. And he transformed them. He reached this result with a confidence in himself that was absolutely astounding. So the only ones who had really immediately opposed a settlement were the English. Always the same thing. For them it was inadmissible that any one particular country in Europe should become strong. They had supposedly made war for Poland, but then they let Poland croak without reacting. The King of Belgium with the Queen of Holland on November 6th, making a major appeal to the belligerents to start talking among themselves and find an arrangement. And that, by the way, is bizarre, because the King of the Belgians does so without even speaking of it to his government. But the text is there. The German proposal, once launched, is approved by all the neutral countries. The Pope insists. This peace proposal, it is properly delivered, formal and public, rejected. And the Germans had not budged. Between the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line, it was the reappearance of Stalin with respect to Finland. He has hardly finished devouring his third of Poland, which did not cost him anything, when he now addresses himself to the Finns to demand concessions of Finnish territories throughout the Gulf of Finland. Stupefaction. The Finns, naturally, are not at all disposed to also cede for no good reason, and even without a fight, a portion of their territory. But Stalin, from the beginning, has shown bad faith. Even before the war with Poland erupted, he had 250,000 men at the Polish frontier. He had given the order to withdraw them, so that Poland could concentrate all their troops at the German border. This in itself was an act of astonishing disloyalty for an ally of Germany. Thus, it's obvious he wanted the conflict to stretch out as long as possible, that the Poles resist Germany more effectively, and for the French and English to have time to intervene and turn in the fight. In fact, this has always been Stalin's plan. And there, one cannot say that he was a hypocrite. It was always clear with him what Stalin wanted, like Lenin before him, was world revolution. He had been quite close to intervening in the war with the Allies. He had negotiated with the English, as he had negotiated with Hitler. But in the end, this is what he wanted: to ally with one of the two, only when both had been bled white, to pick up the pieces, and to develop his imperialistic plan. There were the port openings onto the Baltic, in this country hardly populated. It was Finland. Not very populated, not very rich, and that could scarcely count on Germany, because the latter, in negotiations with Stalin, had admitted that Finland was outside their sphere of influence. What could the Finns do? They tried to maneuver, to contain the danger, to drag out the negotiations. But there is nothing to be done. Not a month passes before the Soviets invade Finland. This is now a new war that is starting. It is, I believe, the 12th of December. And everyone will be confused by this affair. Because the Russians will fight very poorly. People will even believe the Russians are not very strong. The Germans will fool themselves about this. The English will fool themselves about this. Even Stalin will say humbly to himself, "Good thing that Finland wasn't a major operation." This initial debacle gave him the idea to reinforce his army and gain as much time as possible. So this Russian army will arrive en masse 1 million Russian soldiers arrive. And Finland has no more than a total of 175,000 combatants. We see the Russians fighting in the ratio of 5 to 1. Despite that, they do not advance. They don't advance because while they saw how Hitler had changed the rules of warfare, he did not seize intelligently on his tactics of maneuver. They have tanks, plenty of tanks. They have 10,000. And later on they will have even more. They have 10,000. But they don't know that it is important to prepare the passage of these tanks. That they need to fight with tanks which can spread out over a vast, not narrow combat area. The German divisions in Poland, who were only 6 in number, have been able to spread out to the maximum toward each other and join up again because they'd assured themselves enough space for maneuver, because everything was exquisitely timed, because they had powerful radio communications, because they had used their head. But here, the Soviet troops rush off blindly. The Finns put up tank barriers, barriers in the woods, in the forests. It is the logging roads which can be cut off. It suffices to chop down 20 trees, and the Russians cannot get through. While the tanks of Hitler, in their action, had space to maneuver. We see Russia experiencing disasters. 200,000 soldiers will perish in a couple of weeks. 200,000. Because Stalin, who has material power, who has the tanks, who has the aviation, does not know how to coordinate these forces, how to give them an overview of the whole, and give them a breakthrough ability that would assure their victory. He will pay a heavy price for this, and it will always be this way. When years later, we were in combat in the Waffen-SS, in the last year still, we witnessed the spectacle of the wild lunges of the Russians. During the Great War in Russia, one thing is sure, the Russians will suffer an enormous number of dead. 10 million, 12 million dead. But they would have had 10 times less if they had been led with basic intelligence. They were flung headlong into a massacre. Well, this is what has happened already in Finland. 200,000 men will perish. To finally obtain the capitulation of Finland, which simply cannot fight any longer. It's a very small country, 70 times less population than the Soviets. It cannot hold out. Yet normally it should have been wiped out in a week. Think of how the German army wiped out the Polish army in 10 days. But here, it is necessary to wait until the month of March, the 12th of March, 1940. For finally the Finns to lower their weapons, to end up abandoning those territories along the Baltic, desired by the imperialism of Stalin, which he obtained at the cost of immense sacrifices, beyond all measure, but at the same time, with the result absolutely unforeseen, that this war blinded the Western countries and Germany herself as to the true potential of Russia.
Mais entre-temps,
But in the meantime,
ces pays occidentaux
These Western countries, just as the Germans, have not been minus a reaction. The English and the French were, at least in words, at one with the Finns. If they are defending the small nations, here is their chance. But here, once again, their beautiful words are nothing but words. On the French side, even in the files of the French General Staff, we find no plans worked out on this subject. No major operations were prepared for coming to the aid of the Finns. In contrast, there are some significant plans aiming at war against the Russians, but completely from the other side, from the side of the Caucasus, from the side of Baku. And even General Weygand is sent, who was the principal collaborator of Field Marshal Foch in the First World War, to the French colonies in the Middle East to prepare the bombardment of the Soviet oil-producing zones. That exists. The texts are now known. So the French, who could have gone directly to the aid of the Finns, preferred to cut off the Soviets' oil from the other side. But the English plan is even much more cynical. For them, what they see in the Finnish affair is not the aid given democratically to a small victim. No. What they see is the possibility of a chance to attack the Germans from their northern flank in arriving in the Baltic zone. All the zone of influence belonging to Germany, the Baltic Sea, and beyond the Baltic Sea, Sweden and Norway, Sweden touching Finland. All that zone there was wide open. It is the zone from which Germany imports a large portion of the strategic materials that it needs, notably iron ore for steel. Sweden, which comes just before Finland, and through which one must pass to get to Finland, is the great iron ore supplier to Germany. Without the steel from this iron ore, it would be almost impossible for Germany to continue the war. And this iron ore, by the way, she will receive it right up to the end. Sweden will even permit German troops, during their war with the Soviets, to pass through its territory to join the Russian front via Finland. So Sweden stays a cog in the wheel, because it is its economic life at stake. But the Germans are cooperative too, because without Sweden, their military effort is very dangerously exposed. In any case, the Russians encroach on Finnish territory without going further. Whereas the English say to themselves, under the pretext of aiding the Finns, we have the unheard of chance to pass via Norway and Sweden first, before arriving on Finnish territory. The British have an enormous fleet, the most powerful in Europe. The North Sea, between British territory and Norway, belongs to them. And Norway, like Sweden, would be in a bad position to deny the English the right to come to the aid of their Finnish brothers. This is the opportunity the English had dreamed of. They will cross over In a few days, the tip of Norwegian territory and Swedish territory that is in the extreme north, at the Arctic Circle. They arrive in Finland. No one can criticize them. Morally is indisputable. But the Germans from that moment on now have a mass of English troops to their north in Sweden. And they risk having their supply of metals cut for the general staff of the Reich. This danger, you can well imagine that Hitler understood it right away. Beyond that, there was the aggressive arrival of Russians in arms onto Finnish territory. And the month of February of the following year, numerous weeks pass, where Hitler, by every means of information which he could obtain, comes to realize clearly that this British operation could take place at any moment. And Hitler doesn't just hear rumors. There is the extreme audacity of the English. The English come and install mines in the territorial waters of Norway, against all international law, and even come and seize, right in Norwegian waters, a German boat, on board of which 300 English prisoners have been placed and are being transported. Well, they would take it right from Norwegian territory, in territorial waters where this boat has a right to be. It is a commercial vessel, which they will not confiscate. But the English rush out audaciously after it, take their compatriots and liberate them. And Hitler at this moment has to say to himself, I have to be ready to do anything now. However, for him it is very risky, since he has the French border right next to him. There are 5 million soldiers, officially enemies, who can fall upon him at any time. To risk an adventure in Norway, to prevent the English from taking him by the north, is extraordinarily risky. He's not yet ready for it. He has no ships. The German fleet is not even 1/3 the size of the English fleet. He doesn't have enough troops to go up there. He would have to divert troops from elsewhere. He would have to divert aviation. And it is possible, even probable, that at the moment when he would risk all up at the tip of Europe, below the North Pole, it is just at this moment that the English and the French would exploit the situation by pouncing on him via the Maginot Line and perhaps even via Belgium. Well, to count on his generals to launch such a dangerous adventure would have been hopeless naivete on his part. The heads of the German army, the old heads of the German army, from the beginning have been against him. They were already against him at the moment when he reoccupied the Rhineland. Already at that time, they had cried out in terror. They had done everything so that Hitler would not even engage in the Austrian operation, as they would later oppose the war against France. All these old and bemedaled generals of the Third Reich were absolutely opposed. Opposed! Not just opposed, but certain that Hitler would lose. This is what is stupefying. It can be seen how the military in fact, never changes. They had been beaten in 1918, so by rights they should be beaten again in 1940. But everything had changed. A new strategy had been invented, transforming completely the contours of the problem. But they had not understood the problem. They had not understood the new strategy. And they were still mentally thinking of the France of Foch, which they thought would annihilate them in just a few weeks. So Hitler knew that he had there not just opponents, but opponents who would do everything to sabotage him.
Well, that's it. A wrap. We're out of time again. This is John Savers on World War II. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. I do appreciate your tuning in. Hope to see you again at our next John Savers on World War II.